I've never been someone who gets scared easily. I grew up in a house with creaky floorboards and trees that scraped against the windows like skeleton fingers, so I learned early on to ignore the noises that make other people jump. I was the guy who checked the basement when the fuse blew. I was the guy who didn't mind walking to the corner store at midnight. But 3 years ago, during a December snowstorm that buried my neighborhood in a silence so deep it felt heavy, I learned that some noises aren't just the wind, and some things that go bump in the night are actually waiting for you to open the door. It was early December, maybe the 10th or 11th. I was living alone in a rental house in a quiet subdivision, one of those neighborhoods where everyone is either retired and asleep by 8 or a young family that hibernates all winter. I had been working late shifts at the warehouse, racking up overtime before the holidays, pushing myself until my eyes burned. So when the forecast called for 8 inches of snow, I decided to take the night off. I figured I'd stay in, make some chili, drink a beer, and finally finish the video game I'd been neglecting for months. By 9 p.m., the snow was falling hard. It was that heavy, wet snow that sticks to everything, coating the trees and power lines in white sleeves, turning the world into a muffled gray blur. The streetlights were just hazy orange orbs floating in the dark, struggling to push back the gloom. I was in the living room, scrolling through my phone on the couch, half watching a movie, when I saw headlights sweep across my front window. A truck was moving down the street. It wasn't unusual to see cars, but this one was moving slowly, too slowly for someone just driving home. It was crawling, creeping. I stood up and peeked through the blinds. It was an older white pickup, maybe a Ford or a Chevy from the 90s, rusted around the wheel wells like it had cancer. It had a plow attachment on the front, but it wasn't a city truck. It looked cheap, like a DIY job welded on in a garage by someone who didn't know what they were doing.
No flashing yellow lights on the roof, no company logo on the door, just a beat-up white truck with a dented front bumper that looked like it had hit a few too many mailboxes or guardrails. He drove past my house, his brake lights flashing red as he tapped them. Flash, flash, like he was signaling. I watched him go all the way to the cul-de-sac at the end of the block. Just looking for driveways to plow, I told myself, trying to push down the unease, trying to make a quick buck. Just a guy working late like me. 10 minutes later, he came back. This time, he was moving even slower. He hugged the curb on my side of the street, tires crunching on the fresh powder. When he got to the edge of my driveway, he stopped. He didn't pull in. He didn't back up. He just sat there, idling in the middle of the street. The exhaust puffed white clouds into the cold air, obscuring his license plate. I felt a prickle of annoyance mixed with something colder. I hate when people stare at my house. It feels like an invasion of privacy. I shut the blinds tight, twisting the wand until they snapped closed. If he knocks, I'm not answering, I muttered to the empty room. I have a shovel. I can do it myself. I don't need help. But he didn't knock. Not then. I stood there by the window, listening. After a minute, I heard the truck engine rev slightly, a rough sputtering sound, and then the sound of tires crunching on snow as he finally drove away. I relaxed. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I went to the kitchen, ate my dinner, washed the bowl, and tried to settle into the quiet evening I had planned. 20 minutes later, the knocking started. It wasn't a pound. It wasn't the aggressive, urgent hammering of a police officer or a neighbor in trouble. It was soft. Rap, rap, rap. 3 gentle taps on the front door. Polite, almost hesitant, barely audible over the wind howling around the eaves. I froze. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. My house was set back from the road, and with the storm raging, I barely heard it.
I walked to the front hallway, flipping on the porch light as I went. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just swirling snow and the empty darkness of my front porch. The welcome mat was covered in a thin layer of white. "Hello?" I called out through the door. My voice sounded loud in the quiet house. No answer. I waited a few seconds, then unlocked the deadbolt. Clack, and opened the door a crack, keeping my foot wedged against it just in case. There was no one there. The driveway was empty. The street was empty. No white truck. No footprints on the porch steps that I could see in the swirling snow. Weird. I whispered. I closed the door and locked it again, throwing the deadbolt hard. Maybe it was the wind rattling the screen door. Maybe it was some neighborhood kid playing ding-dong ditch in a blizzard, though that seemed unlikely given the weather. I went back to the kitchen. 5 minutes later, it happened again. Tap, tap, tap. This time, it wasn't the door. It was the window right next to the door. The narrow, vertical one that lets light into the hallway. My stomach tightened into a knot. That wasn't the wind. Wind doesn't tap in a rhythm. Wind doesn't have knuckles. I walked back to the hallway, moving quieter this time, stepping on the rugs to muffle my footsteps. I reached out and adjusted the blinds on the side window, peering out into the storm. Nothing. Just my porch railing covered in fresh snow, and the storm blowing sideways across the yard. I stepped back, the hair on my arms standing up. "Okay," I said aloud. "That's not funny. Whoever you are, get lost." I went back to the kitchen and started doing the dishes, trying to drown out the silence with the sound of running water. My mind started doing that thing it does, running through worst-case scenarios. Is it a serial killer? Is it a prank? Is he a drunk guy who thinks this is his house? Is he watching me right now? Then came the third knock. This one made me drop a spoon into the sink with a loud clatter. Thump, thump, thump. It came from the back door.
The sliding glass door in the dining area, 15 feet away from where I was standing. I shut off the faucet instantly. The house went dead silent. The only sound was the refrigerator humming and the wind buffeting the siding. I grabbed the biggest knife I owned, a chef's knife with an 8-inch blade, from the drying rack. My hand was shaking slightly, the steel feeling cold and heavy. I walked slowly toward the dining room, staying low, keeping away from the windows. I didn't want to present a target. The back door had heavy curtains, so I couldn't see out. I stood next to the frame, listening. I held my breath. Nothing. I reached out and pulled the curtain back in one swift motion, knife raised, ready to strike. Glass, snow, darkness. No face pressed against the window, no dark figure standing on the patio. But then I looked down. The patio light washed over the concrete slab outside. There was fresh snow on it, maybe an inch that had fallen in the last hour. And in that snow, there were footprints. Heavy boot prints, large, deep. They started at the edge of the patio and walked straight up to the glass. And they stopped. There were no footprints leading away. There was no trail going back to the yard, no tracks circling around to the side. Just a single set of tracks walking up to my door and ending right at the threshold. That meant he hadn't left. That meant he was standing on the concrete, pressed against the siding of the house, just out of my line of sight. Pressed against the wall, waiting for me to open the door. "I see you," I shouted at the glass. "I have a weapon. I'm calling the police. Get off my property." My voice cracked. I sounded terrified, not tough. I sounded like prey. I didn't wait for an answer. I yanked the curtain shut, blocking the view of the terrifying empty footprints. I went around the ground floor, turning off every light I could find. I wanted to see out without being seen. I checked the deadbolts on the front door, the back door, and the side door. All locked. I checked the windows. Locked. Minutes passed. They felt like hours.
Every creak of the house settling sounded like a footstep. Then, another knock. Tap, tap, tap. The side window in the dining room, the one facing the neighbor's fence. Same rhythm, same gentle force. He was circling the house. He was testing every opening. He was looking for a weakness. I felt a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. This wasn't a prank. Pranks get boring after 10 minutes. This was hunting. This was patience. I crept to the dining room window and peered through the slat of the blinds. For a split second, I saw movement. Just the corner of a dark coat whipping around the edge of the house, disappearing into the shadows of the backyard. He's there. I whispered to myself, the reality finally sinking in. He's actually there.
I went down, bringing the knife with me just in case. I sat at my desk, put on my headset, and booted up a game. I needed to zone out. I needed to forget about the footprints in the white truck.
I played for about an hour. The game was loud, immersive. I let myself get lost in the pixels and the objectives. Then, around 1 a.m., the feeling hit me. You know that feeling. The sudden, primal awareness that you are not alone. The hair on the back of your neck standing up like static electricity. A cold shiver that starts at the base of your spine. An intense urge to turn around. I paused the game. I took off my headset. Silence in the basement. Just the hum of the computer fans and the furnace kicking on. I spun my chair around slowly. My monitor was glossy, reflecting the room behind me like a black mirror. And in the reflection of the screen, I saw it, a silhouette, standing outside the sliding glass door, right behind me. My stomach dropped so hard, I felt physically nauseous. I whipped around in my chair to look at the door directly. For a split second, the motion sensor light outside flickered on, illuminating the figure in a harsh white glare. It was a man. He was wearing a heavy, bulky coat that looked too big for him, a dark color, maybe navy or black, and he had a hood pulled tight over his head so I couldn't see his face, just darkness where eyes should be, just a void. He was standing perfectly still, staring at me through the glass. Then, before my eyes could fully adjust, before I could even scream, he stepped to the side, out of the light, vanishing back into the shadow of the house. I didn't hesitate this time. I grabbed my phone from the desk and dialed 911. My fingers were fumbling, slipping on the screen. 911, what is your emergency? There's a man trying to break into my house, I whispered, my voice trembling so bad I could barely speak. He's in the backyard. He was looking in my window. He's been stalking me all night. Okay, sir. What is your address? I gave it to her, rattling it off as fast as I could. Please hurry. He's right outside. Is he inside the house? She asked. No, he's outside, but he's been circling for hours. Screech! The sound cut me off. It came from upstairs. It was the sound of metal scraping against metal. Loud, violent, grinding. It was the front door lock. He's at the front door, I hissed into the phone. He's trying to pick it or drill it. He's coming in. Get somewhere safe, the dispatcher said, her voice urgent now. Lock yourself in a room. Officers are on the way. Creak! The sound of hinges groaning. My front door opening. The wind from the storm rushed into the house upstairs. I could hear the sudden whoosh of air and the slam of the door hitting the wall. He was in. He hadn't picked the lock. He had forced it. Or he had a key. Or he just broke it. Then came the sound that haunts me to this day. Laughter. A low, guttural laugh that started in his chest and escalated into a scream. Not a scream of fear. A scream of pure, unhinged rage. And then, heavy, pounding footsteps running across the hardwood floor above my head. Thud, 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 thud. He wasn't sneaking. He wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. He was charging, and he was heading for the basement stairs. I panicked. Absolute, blind panic. The kind that overrides thought. I dropped my phone on the carpet. I didn't even try to pick it up. I looked at the sliding glass door. The security bar was in place. I grabbed my boots. By some miracle of laziness, I had brought my heavy winter boots downstairs earlier after shoveling the patio. They were sitting right by the door, still wet with melted snow. I jammed my feet into them. I didn't tie them. I didn't care. I grabbed my coat off the back of the chair. The footsteps hit the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. He was coming down. I could hear his breathing now. Ragged, wet breaths. I ripped the security bar out of the track and threw it on the floor. It clattered loudly. I unlocked the slider.
I threw the door open and the cold winter air blasted into the warm basement. I didn't look back. I didn't look at the stairs. I ran. I ran out into the snow,
sprinting across the backyard in untied boots, slipping on the ice, scrambling to stay upright. The snow was deep, up to my shins, but I didn't feel the cold. I just felt the terror of what was behind me. I didn't have my keys. I didn't have my phone. I didn't have the knife. I just ran like a bat out of hell toward my neighbor's house, watching my breath tear out of my lungs in white clouds, praying he wasn't faster than me. I reached my neighbor's porch, Mr. Henderson, a retired guy who usually went to bed at 9, and started banging on his door with both fists. "Help! Call the police! Help!" The lights came on inside. Mr. Henderson opened the door, looking terrified, wearing a bathrobe and holding a baseball bat. "He's in my house!" I yelled, pushing past him. "Call 911! There's a guy in my house!" We locked his door. We called the police again. We waited in his kitchen, watching my house through the window across the yard. The lights in my house were still on. We could see shadows moving. 5 minutes later, blue and red lights flooded the street. 2 cruisers skidded to a stop in front of my driveway. Officers swarmed the yard, guns drawn. They went inside. I watched their flashlights sweep through the windows of my house, upstairs, downstairs, basement. I held my breath, waiting for gunshots. After 20 minutes, an officer came over to get me. "Is he there?" I asked, my voice shaky. "House is clear," the officer said grimly. "Whoever it was, he's gone. Back door was open." They let me come back over. When I walked through the front door, I felt sick. My house wasn't burglarized. It was destroyed. It looked like a tornado had formed inside the living room. Every cabinet door in the kitchen was ripped off its hinges. Drawers were pulled out and dumped on the floor. Silverware, junk, paperwork scattered everywhere. Flour and sugar coated the tiles.
My couch. My brand new leather couch was slashed open. Stuffing was pulled out in handfuls, covering the floor like snow. I walked to the bedroom. My mattress was flipped over. My clothes were pulled out of the closet and thrown around the room. I went to the basement. My computer tower was knocked over, the glass side panel shattered. My monitor was face down on the desk. My phone, which I had dropped on the carpet, was smashed, stomped on. Nothing was missing. My wallet was on the counter. Cash was still in it. My gaming PC components were there. The TV was untouched. This wasn't a robbery. It was a tantrum. It was pure, focused rage directed at my life. And then I saw the whiteboard. I kept a large dry erase board in the living room for work schedules and reminders. In the center of the board, written in black marker, was a message. "I'll be back. Sleep tight." The smiley face was drawn with jagged, angry lines. The marker had been pressed so hard it squeaked when he wrote it. The cops told me I shouldn't stay there that night. "No kidding," I said. "I'm never staying here again." I grabbed a bag of clothes, my toothbrush, and left. I went to a friend's place across town. I sat on his couch and stared at the wall until sunrise. I didn't sleep more than 20 minutes. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that laugh. The next morning, I called my landlord. "I'm breaking the lease," I said. "I'm out today." He tried to argue at first, talking about penalties and notice periods. Then I told him what the cops said. They found footprints. In the fresh snow around my house, there were tracks circling the building, over and over. The same tread pattern as the boots found near the sliding door. The same pattern at the front door. The same pattern at the side window. The guy hadn't just knocked and left. He had been walking laps around my house for hours, watching me, waiting for me to turn off a light or look away. And the tracks led away from the house, down the street, and vanished where the plow had cleared the road. They never found the man. They never found the white truck with the dented bumper. I moved out within a week. I left most of my furniture because looking at it made me feel sick. I still don't know why he chose me. I don't know if it was random. I don't know if he followed me home from work. But the thing that messes with me the most isn't the knocking, isn't the destruction. It's the timing. He knew when I was in the kitchen. He knew when I went to the basement. He knew exactly when to open the front door to trap me downstairs. He had been watching long enough to learn the layout of my life in a single night. I haven't lived alone since, and every time it snows,
I close the blinds because I know that sometimes the footprints stop at the door, and sometimes the door opens, and sometimes when the wind howls just right, I can still hear that laughter echoing down the basement stairs. I live in an apartment building now, top floor, secure entry, cameras in the hallways. I like the noise of neighbors. I like hearing footsteps in the hall that belong to people I know. But I never bought another whiteboard, and I never bought another white truck.